So everybody has been in some sort of game where you've gotten a weapon that you were just like, oh yeah. And it's kind of heartbreaking when you lose the weapon, whether it's because you switch campaigns or it gets broken in combat because your DM figures out he should have never given you the weapon, which that never actually happened, but I know he thought about it. But let's talk a little bit about our favorite D&D weapons that we've had the privilege of playing with, or it could possibly be favorite weapon that you've seen played.
I had a bard that had a bandolier of darts that you gave me, and I could throw 2 at a time. I'm not sure how much of that was homebrewed.
Yeah, so it was homebrewed, the 2 at a time.
Yeah.
I think there's somewhere in the equipment list with bandoliers for holding those kind of things, but the 2 at a time darts do like 1d4. And I remember back in like a 2nd edition or whatever, there was a point where, before extra attacks came along, and they had these big, huge, bulky tables for different classes, and there was a point where if your dexterity was high enough, then you could shoot 2 missiles in a turn.
Yeah.
And I missed those days, especially if you've got a character that's going to play with darts. So I just brought it back because I could. I was in charge.
And I loved it. And it wasn't like a particularly impressive weapon, but just roleplay wise, I just always remember feeling like I would do this like thing with my hand where like 2 darts out and like
Hawkeye's shit.
I was thinking more like Bullseye in the Daredevil movie. Wasn't that Bullseye that had like the brand of a bullseye on his thing?
Hawkeye and Bullseye have very similar power sets. Hawkeye has a little more on the close combat, I think, than Bullseye does, but Bullseye is...
It's a pity that movie got such bad press and reviews, because I thought damn it, I almost had the actor's name.
Ben Affleck.
No, with Bullseye.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, he nailed that freaking part. He was just great as this almost crazy bad guy,
Colin Farrell is a little problematic.
Is he?
But I do enjoy him, from what I've heard. Like, I don't know. I've never met the guy, but I do enjoy his roles. He did the Penguin in the new Batman movie. I've heard he was really good in that, too.
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen either, but...
Anyway, back to you and your favorite weapons.
It wasn't like super impressive, but I just remember playing it was super fun, and it improved the fun for that character, because, it's not a heavy hitter, and doing like 1d4 once per round.
2d4 is always better than 1d4.
Right. When I was able to do 2d4 plus, my dexterity, which, that made it so much more fun, and that one has always stuck with me as one of my favorite, and my mini, actually, had, a bandolier, and it was great. I loved it.
Did you design that thing on, Hero Forge?
I did.
Have them
I don't know if I have it shipped, but I had it, I made one. I feel like the one I found was, a little halfling with, a little bandolier. But
cool.
I loved that one. What about you?
So I don't know that Steve has a favorite.
Because Steve plays monks.
Strollatone?
But my characters have favorite weapons, right? It's very, what character am I playing?
Right.
How cool is. So I'm really partial to Stas's Silvered Maul, right? So here's this little goblin barbarian wielding a weapon that
Silvered Maul
is supposed to be, because it's a maul and it's a heavy weapon, small creatures are supposed to have disadvantage on any strikes with it. But we were 3 or 4 episodes or sessions into him having that maul before I realized, oh, this guy's supposed to be, and I mentioned it to you, and you're like,
run with
it's
it.
a better story. This little green guy
who just chooses to ignore it. He's like, I'm just going to do it
I feel like
anyway.
he just chokes up on the bat.
Yeah.
So I love that for him. I'm really partial to hand crossbows for rogues. So I've got this rogue that I'm playing right now, Tabaxi Rogue, and uses a hand crossbow. But I'm going to do a little shift here real quick. When we were playing Titan Effects last week, and I was coming up with a loadout for my guy, there's this thing in the equipment called a tactical sling, which if you use this tactical sling for your rifle or whatever, then switching from one weapon to the other doesn't take you an extra turn. You know, like I'm just putting this one down and drawing the other weapon, right? It's just this tactical sling is set up so you go from the sniper rifle to the submachine gun. That's a brilliant idea. Weeks ago in my D&D campaign online, I actually went to like an artificer or whatever and paid to have like a little retractable cord that would attach to my belt and to my hand crossbow.
So you could drop
because
it.
I was always dropping it when it got real close thing and pulling out my rapier. And then I always felt like obligated to remember to go pick up the crossbow that I dropped. You know, DMs probably are, yeah, of course you pick that thing up. But I'm always like, I take this turn to go pick up my cross. So putting that thing in there just made it really...
That's pretty cool.
Really cool. And then you pair that hand crossbow with, I forget which feat it is, crossbow expert or...
I know the one you're talking about where that's like the reload...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called.
But you can also use it in melee. You can, be fighting some guy with your rapier and you got this hand crossbow. You can shoot somebody else 10 feet away with the hand crossbow and not take any disadvantage for firing that in melee. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty epic.
In monks, I like my monk had a flute, and then I reskinned the flute as a club. Well, I reskinned a club as the flute and used it as my monk weapon. So he'd play the flute, but he'd also whack you across the head with the flute. Which brings up a really cool point for anybody, right? You want to make a weapon that you really love and is your favorite weapon? Reskinning is easy as hell.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Here's the stat block, DM. This is a short sword. It does 1d6 in its finesse. Okay, that's what I'm going to use. Now, here's what it's going to look like and what I'm going to name it. And you can create a weapon that is just cool for your character. And then you'll find out what it means to have a favorite weapon.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Favorite weapon I've ever seen used would probably be the character Strollatone, played by Tim, with the trident that magically returned to his hand.
It was pretty brilliant.
There's plenty of weapons out there that like magically, like, or a bonus action returns to your hand, but he was just epic in the way Tim was, in the way that he used that thing. It made it really...
He would like throw it and let it lodge into something and go several turns doing something else, and then he'd be like, oh, and by the way... and we're like, oh...
So what about you, John? Favorite weapons?
I'm sure you remember it. There was a character named Gronk that we had when we first started playing 3.5, and being the new, like totally new to D&D, new to all things TTRPG. I had played like one board game back in the day that was kind of like D&D but not, and then like Risk and Axis and Allies, obviously. But
was the board game Dungeon, I think it was called, where you take these cards and put them on upside down and you move your little pawns through the...
I want to say it was called like Hero Quest or something, but I don't think that was it. I don't remember what it was called, though. It had like a huge plastic mat you would set out for a map, and had like pieces. You would build a castle, and then you had like the orcs and the humans, and you would fight them, and...
Sounds like Mousetrap for D&D.
Kind of was. But this Life Drinker Axe, we were all kind of new to 3.5 at that point. I don't think y'all had played 3.5. And we didn't realize at the time that using the axe gave negative levels, which for non-undead is a lethal proposition, but we didn't know what negative levels meant, and so I just kept using it, and it had like leech life on it, where every time I would get a hit, I would get temporary hit points, and eventually you would grumble about, I need to find a way to take that axe away from you.
Should have given him that.
It did lead to a lot of unbalanced encounters where I would never go below full hit points with the whole enemy squad just
to
railing
the point
on
that
me.
you had a catchphrase of Gronk Smash, and we made a shirt. We had a shirt made. Do you remember that? It's a Gronk
do.
Smash. Because he literally would just come in and you'd just be like, Gronk Smash, and tear ass up.
Right. So, I mean, it's every DM's nightmare when sessions later, rule of cool comes back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
I went with this because it was rule of cool. Several sessions later, it's like, this is breaking everything. He's abusing the fuck out of it. How do I think you weren't abusing the fuck out of it? I just mean in general. Rule of cool can come back to bite you in the ass. So
It can. I really like cursed weapons. Like, that are very, like, not curses in, like, they kill you, but curses in, like, they're an inconvenience. Like, ones you can't put down, or ones that mumble to you in the dark about cheese. And they're like, man, I could really go for some Gouda. Like,
first weapons that give you some kind of cool advantage, whether it's a +1 or whatever, so that you want to use it. But then the curse, to me, what really rocks is the curse then plays into the role-playing aspect, right? And you have to role-play what this curse is. You know?
I would say for weapons that I've seen played, Travis Willingham in Critical Role had a weapon at one point that, like, only he could hear talking to him, and it, like, thirsted for blood, and it was constantly like, satiate me, and he'd be like, no, and they're like, who are you talking about? He's like, no one.
Yeah.
I love cursed weapons. I think they're great.
So, I mean, you brought up Gronk as we talk about favorite weapons. I don't know how we get off of this topic without conveniently also discussing Maloreth's weapon.
Correct.
So, these Good Morning Gab sessions we're taping now will be chunked up into cup of coffee size servings and appear on Maloreth's Weapons YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Video on demand. Every morning, get up, make your coffee, watch one. It's great. 15 minutes, you don't get coffee, you're done with it, off to your day. But the Maloreth's Weapons story just seems like it fits into this favorite weapons thing really good.
I feel like it does.
You want to go for it?
Let's have a short vape break, and the people out there watching this can watch it tomorrow.